not frustrating when you are eager to access research papers and find that your university doesn't have the rights of subscriptions? And many of us, again, have experienced this, and I struggled when I was a doctoral student to access many papers. Is it not time we start to think about how we make research available and accessible to everyone? Firstly, I'd like to begin with a heartfelt thank you to Bridget and our remarkable team behind this event. And I think this isn't just a webinar, but again, it's a carefully crafted vision for developing better scholarly research. And from my conversation with colleagues and students, it's clear that a webinar of this nature is truly needed. And I'm pleased to see such a strong turnout here today, which highlights that this is not just an extension of what the journals do, but again, it's a call to action for us to start submitting our work and building those research networks. And again, it's good to see many of the people who were at the BAM conference here today. I'm still at BAM. I must also acknowledge my co-editors, Natalia, Amon, Veronica, and Dima, whose insights and dedication have been instrumental in bringing this event to life. And again, thank you for your continued support. For want of time, I won't be using slides, and I want to take a slightly different approach by speaking briefly. So I'll keep it short, brief, within 3 to 5 minutes. I want to use this time to look behind the context and importance of my journal, which is the Journal of Trust Studies. And it's pretty much slightly different from all the fantastic journals that we've heard the editors speak about today. So for today, I'm wearing two hats, one as a long-standing member of the research community and the other as the editor of the Journal of Trust Studies. Firstly, we can all attest to the fact that the world around us is rapidly changing, and we see that the internet has transformed how we access and share research, unlocking new avenues for spreading and disseminating knowledge. But I think underneath this, there's this burning question: should research be freely accessible to everyone, or should it remain behind paywalls? Is it not frustrating when you are eager to access research papers and find that your university doesn't have the rights of subscriptions? And many of us, again, have experienced this, and I struggled when I was a doctoral student to access many papers. It's a challenge we need to tackle head on, because the question is it not time we start to think about how we make research available and accessible to everyone? It appears that in our society, where trust is the foundation of our social and professional and institutional interactions, we should be able to have a free and open access journal that is dedicated to providing a unique platform for exploring that concept of trust. So our Journal of Trust Research of Trust Studies meets this gap heads on. And for us, our mission is clear. We want to be ambitious to serve as a leading forum that unites scholars and policymakers and consultants and even practitioners on the global dialogue and conversations and trust. And for us, I think it's an important issue for the moment, because we see open access as a monumental shift in the way knowledge is shared. So I think we are a very international journal, and we are biannual and open. We've got that open access, and we are committed to making all our content and all our papers free and available. And again, this is kind of consistent with the principles of the Budapest Open Access Initiative that ensures that everyone, irrespective of where you are located, can access and download and share our articles without restriction. And for me, as someone who struggled over the past, I felt it would be good to champion this as a new and premium journal. So we were established last year, and we are published by the Open Academic Publishing. It's a global publisher that champions the open access model. And the open access publication is registered in Norway, and also publishes the Journal of Digital Transformation and Journal of Systematic Reviews, and all of which adheres to the open access principles. And of course, the idea is to make sure that our scholarly research is accessible to all. First, I think we must acknowledge that, just like my colleagues here have mentioned, that AI is transforming how we write and produce research. Just like as we rely on tools like Google and Grammarly, AI is becoming a key part of our writing process. So for us at the Journal of Trust Studies, we expect authors to use AI ethically. This means you being transparent how that AI has been used in your research, including the prompts you use, and ensuring that it supports your work rather than replacing your own critical thinking. I think for us, the goal as a new journal is for us to embrace AI, because it's the future. It's going to be our culture. It's going to be our way of life. But again, we wanted you to embrace it as a valuable tool, while again upholding the highest standards of integrity and originality. We, as a journal, we welcome strong theoretical, conceptual, and empirical papers. We also we like systematic literature reviews that address a wide array of topics related to trust and distrust. The editorial board's annual target is to publish over 100 papers, including book reviews and editorials. But I think one thing that is interesting is why we strive to maintain rigor. We do not want to be perceived as too elitist, as many of the journals we have today. And again, for us who are early career researchers and mid-career researchers, many of the reasons why journal articles have been rejected, as explained by my co-colleagues here, and I won't belabor the point further. But again, I think the idea is we need to be able to show how our research contributes to theory and policy and practice. But again, with a strong emphasis on impact. But again, as a reminder, it's encouraging to see that for REF 2030, and some many of you might know here, ABS journal rankings will not be used as measures of significance, originality, and rigor for the next REF. So that's what, for us as a journal, we want to be able to welcome articles and perhaps even reports and policy papers that address many of the wicked problems within the society. And I think for those policy and research papers, policy reports and policy papers, they shouldn't extend beyond 5,000 words. But again, our word count for the other generalist academic submissions is 8,000 words. Executive editorial board, we have a set of experienced editors. We've got Carmen, a professor from the University of Brazil. We have Professor Karen Kuku, so many of you might know, who is a Lehman Wilbur professor of sociology from the Stanford University. We've got Noam Ebner, who is a professor of negotiation and conflict resolution from Nebraska in USA. We've got the senior advisor to the president of Taiwan, who is Hing Swang Michael Hiao, and again, a host of many other learned and experienced academics. In terms of our submissions, we welcome submissions from trusts to online trust, to the credibility of digital platforms, to institutional trusts and institutional distrust, political transparency. And I think for us, our scope is vast and multidisciplinary. I think some of the key things we would like to see is things around credibility, the typologies around trust, media trust, institutional trust, organizational trust at the macro level, at the meso level, at the micro level, social capital, trust theories, political and interpersonal trust, trust in governments, societal trust, and a host of other aspects on trust and distrust. We have in place a very fast yet rigorous publication process that ensures high quality researchers so that we can get the papers out promptly, but again, without compromising academic integrity. And currently we have two special issues in progress. One focuses on trust and context, and the other on trust and artificial intelligence. And both of them have submission deadlines of January. I think the idea around the special issues is to ensure that we kind of look at the evolving areas of trust, but again, bring in fresh insights for scholars and policymakers. So, but again, what kind of sets us apart, like I mentioned, is that open access, because again, we want that knowledge to be universally accessible, free from barriers, and ensure that our content is accessible to everyone, whether students in developing countries or policymakers at international institutions, so that we can kind of foster and drive that strong conversation around the global dialogue on trust. And again, this is about more than removing those paywalls, but again, it's about building that inclusive and informed discourse that can drive meaningful change. Looking ahead, we're happy to announce several exciting innovations. Some of the things we want to do is launch our podcast series that will feature in-depth discussions on trust-related topics with experts and policymakers and practitioners. This kind of makes our platform more research accessible, and again, ensures that we are able to engage a broader audience by bringing that study to life and again, exploring the practical implications. Then we also have a series of short format submissions, perhaps short management papers, and some impactful pieces that provide us actionable insights for policymakers and practitioners. We've got a LinkedIn page, and again, we want you to join us. Hope to nurture a more inclusive and impactful conversation, but again, also support early career and middle career development of researchers here today. We want to see you sending your papers, and I'm happy to take questions. But again, thank you, and I look forward to the exciting discussions that lie ahead. Thank you so much again, Bridget, for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for that presentation. you mentioned open access. Someone in the comments has already asked, and that question was directed at Professor Amon earlier. And the question is, why are academic journals charging so much for open access? When are they going to move away from the practice of charging money? So that is the question. And the person did apologize for being so direct, but would like to have an answer. So if you can address that for us, please.
I think very quickly.
Okay. I'll keep it simple. I think firstly, open access is a publishing model that makes research articles freely accessible to everyone without subscription fees or paywalls. So what this means is that anyone, anywhere can access and read and use that research without having to pay for it or have any institutional access. Now, the goal of that open access is to increase the dissemination and impact of research by removing any barriers to access. Now, one of the questions you ask is, why are some journals charging for open access? I think why the principle of open access is to make that research available. The process of publishing, involves a high cost. Publication is expensive. This includes the expense for peer review and editing and hosting content online. But again, even the peer reviewers don't even receive any money.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't receive any money. So many open access journals, again, there are some journals that, but I think a lot of the journals, take into consideration this cost, the cost of publishing and ensuring that these journals remain sustainable. Again, there's a strong ecosystem, but again, ensure that those journals have a healthy stream. And again, many of these universities subscribe to the journals. So I think the idea around those journals charging a lot of money, is perhaps to ensure that they're able to maintain the high quality the high quality of maintaining those journals, and also paying people who also work around the operational aspect of the journals. So I think there are still conversations around that, and a lot of universities pay huge amounts of money, running into hundreds of thousands, to have access to journals. So it's a strong ecosystem. It forms part of our research community. But again, I think, in my opinion, is that the world is changing, and soon there might be a need to start looking at, why do we have to pay so much for our publication? So for instance, you write a paper and you submit to journals, and you realize that your university now has to pay for that access to your own paper. Sometimes it doesn't really make sense, but again, it's what's on ground, and maybe we'll get to see what the future is. But again, the idea is that why they charge those monies is because of the process of publishing, and maintaining those high quality journals also involves high costs. So I'll stop at that, and maybe Amon wants to shed some light on it.
There are two things here. So as a journal, you have to link up with the publisher. So the publisher, they own the space, and I think the costs are related to the processes that are involved in all that process, making it available and accessible each and every time. So I don't know whether this could be changed or if there's a way to do it, but I think Kingsley has just explained in terms of their journal. It does involve a lot of money publishing one paper. So I think that's where it comes in. If a university is paying for access to that, I think that's a good thing. Whether the cost will go down, I don't know. I think that part is the publisher.
Thank you, Bridget. King, I enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
That is a promise. I'm going back 20 years when I was earlier career researcher. Your journal would have been my main target. Regarding the APC thing, there's nothing wrong with charging APCs. It's just when you begin to charge somebody 10 years salary to publish a paper. Can you imagine you publishing in a journal and your employers don't have access to your own paper, not the journal's paper, your own paper? So this raises another set of issues. Who owns the intellectual property rights? Are you free to make your own publication in a journal open access? You're not making the journal open access. Open access at least to your own employer, to your affiliation and friends and family, without incurring the wrath and the legal development of the publisher. Yeah? APC, I have no concerns with. But how can you be charging somebody £2,000 for subscription? Who does that? So that's my concern with open access. I'm glad this open access issue is coming up. But you see that your journal, kindly share the link to your journal with Bridget so that you can share with me. I will craft an article for your journal because I like the fluidity of it. Yeah, the all inclusivity of it. Thanks. Awesome presentation.
Thank you.
Absolutely, Professor Madiche, and it's a pleasure to hear those kind comments. And we are open to ideas and suggestions. And I think the idea is about inclusivity and getting people to publish. I struggled when I was a doctoral student to gain access to journals. I struggled to gain access to many leading journals, and I'm thinking, and this is not to denigrate the excellent work many journals are doing. But again, I think the idea of research is to kind of promote an inclusive culture whereby people can contribute their research and again gain the scope to develop and again address many of the wicked problems in our society. So happy to welcome articles, but again, make sure it's focused on trust, and I'll be looking forward to hearing from everyone.
It's interesting that we're talking about open access in the context of a journal about trust. And I think that part of, and I think I do have a problem with APCs first, because as a researcher, that's a lot of work that you put into producing a paper, hopefully trying to establish a society, and then to ask that you pay from your pocket to get that out to the society is also something. But again, in the context of even talking about trust, I think part of the challenges that we have is that there's not a lot of transparency around how this money, and I do agree there's a lot of money that goes into publishing, but there's not a lot of transparency about who pays what and then who gets what out of, is it a for-profit, is it a not-for-profit, who gets what share of whatever profit comes. I think people would be more interested in paying and benefiting society if they could see exactly, kind of follow the money. And so it's just interesting that we're having this conversation around APCs in the context of a journal about trust.
Absolutely, I do agree. I do agree with you because I think for those academic journal publications, I agree that there's a lack of clarity around the financial aspects, and sometimes these ownerships are hidden. So again, we need to come to understand how these profits are reinvested into the journal, or I think most of those profits are perhaps maybe distributed to the stakeholders. Because the idea is journals should be able to operate without that primary goal of generating profits. And if there are any revenues, I think the revenues, rather than being invested back into the journal again, should be able to be invested into supporting the authors. My mindset, my model is around journal houses paying the journal authors money for their research, and that's how it should be, because this is my intellectual property, right? I expect if I come up with a journal, I come up with a piece of research, why not pay me for that? Even if you pay me £20 or £50, it means a lot to me. So I think those are kind of conversations we should be having. How are we rewarded, rather than being rewarded through promotions in our universities? Perhaps there should be some kind of financial element to us as stakeholders. Because we are core stakeholders, we need to start enjoying the benefits of our research.
I think in South Africa, that's what they do. Publishing in South Africa for the academics is such a huge money. I don't know if they've changed the model. There were some South Africans in this group today, but when I was living in South Africa, I think for every publication, they used to give like 35,000 rands at that time to the publisher. So people were, but they did have specific journals that you can publish in. So if you publish in those specific journals, there was reward. I don't know if they have changed it because the numbers are growing every day. So maybe it's a model that they may not be able to maintain. I'd like to say thank you to all our speakers. Thank you. And this is the first time we've done something academic. We've always had our webinars to talk about women because it's a women research network. But I've seen the kind of interest that this has generated. And I agree with Professor Aman and Dima. We need to have a follow-up. These webinars are bi-monthly. So there will be a follow-up webinar in the next 2 months on some of the issues that you've raised, like responding to comments from reviewers and all of those things, and how to align your papers to suit the journals and all of that. So we will have a follow-up, and I will let you guys know as soon as we know who the speakers will be, and so that I would hope to have you back again for this follow-up discussion. Please follow us on our social media pages.